Welcome to the Inside Carolina podcast. I'm your host, Tommy Ashley, joined by Jason Staples and Greg Barnes. That means it is the Game Plan podcast, certainly sponsored by Johnny T-Shirt, johnnytshirt.com. And take a moment to rate us and review us and subscribe on YouTube. If you missed during the week the post-game podcast, I had Dewey Burke and Michael Brooker and Sherelle McMillan on those for the Maui Invitational. So check those out. They were not on YouTube. They're on our normal Apple, iTunes, all that stuff, the audio podcast. And that brings me to the first person I'm going to talk to is Greg Barnes. Greg Barnes, how was Maui?
I don't know if you can tell. I got a little bit of a suntan on the days that it did not snow. But, yeah, that's one of the funny things is you go to the Maui Invitational. It's this big deal, right? And I walked from the hotel in downtown Asheville, which was maybe a half a mile. So Monday night, it was dark. I walk over to the facility, and they're taking your temperatures when you walk in the door. Well, because it was so cold in Asheville, it snowed that night, that I had to wait by the front desk for 10 minutes because my temperature wouldn't take. My face was so cold. It finally took at 94.2. So I had a 94.2 temperature as what they recorded before I walked into the game. So it's I don't know if there's a more 2020 anecdote than that in terms of covering UNC athletics.
Yeah. I saw a meme the other day that said, "Why in the world are they testing men's fevers? When they walk in places. Have you ever seen a man walk around with a fever?"
That's right. My wife sent me that one.
Oh yeah, funny.
Yep, and Tommy, you were in Bahamas last year. You know where that tournament was originally scheduled to be played after the COVID situation, right?
It was like South Dakota or something.
South Dakota, and they said, "Yeah, we're just not going to do this."
Yeah, I saw some people had said early on at the Battle for Atlantis in South Dakota, and I think the Atlantis put out a thing and said, "Yeah, that's not us. We're not affiliated with that out there in South Dakota."
Well, we had surfboards, we had Hawaiian shirts. I mean, they were trying very hard. They did before the championship game against Texas. We didn't sing I didn't sing it, but nobody sang the national anthem. They did sing the Hawaiian state anthem. And so they had the song come on, they had a video display. So they did everything they could to make you feel like you were in Maui other than the below freezing temperatures outside.
Yeah, other than the sand and the beach right outside the gym door there. It's yeah, you're right. What a 2020 thing. Maybe one day we'll get back to some semblance of normal. Buck Sanders, I want to go to Maui in 5 years if it's actually in Maui. If it's in Asheville, I'll just drive up there. Greg, I know you've been busy. I know you've been on basketball mindset for the past few days, but Carolina has a football game Saturday at noon against Western Carolina. This is a game, and this is a game plan podcast, where we're not going to spend a ton of time on Western Carolina. Carolina's favorite, I believe the line's 50.
It is 50.
Obscene. If I was a betting person, I don't know what I would do.
What is more attractive? How about this? The 50-point spread or the 69 over-under?
I don't know.
I'd probably give me the under. The under is the most attractive thing right there.
You
think so too?
I think Carolina scores, if they want to. Carolina maybe scores 65, 67 by
That's
themselves.
The key, though. If they want to, they could win this game 56-7 and still be well under that and still get everything they want to done. Take the under, folks.
After Jason Staples with his dietary suggestions and also his betting suggestions, Greg, first of all, Carolina's supposed to play Charlotte back in September. That fell through. This game came up a little bit later. Why is North Carolina playing Western Carolina on the first weekend in December?
Well, the primary answer to that question is because the ACC needed the content. Because when the Charlotte game was canceled, they tried to get a game that weekend. And then they tried to get a game the next weekend because it was the open date. And they could not get anything to work out. I mean, they contacted a bunch of teams that had openings, and some teams were asking for some crazy money. I'm trying to remember. Don't hold me to this, but I want to say North Carolina was going to pay Charlotte $600,000 because they had rescheduled the game initially, and They went from 500 to 600. They offered that to a number of teams to come to Chapel Hill, since you already had that money accounted for, and teams wanted more than that, which was crazy. And UNC was shocked. They figured it'd be an easy fix. Was not the case. And then they started looking ahead and said, well, we do have the opening before the Notre Dame game, but that at that point in time, the academics calendar had already changed. And so UNC knew that they were going to be in exams that week. And they said, well, we don't want to do that to the kids. Well, then you're out of dates. And so UNC said, well, we're just not going to have a non-conference game. And the ACC said, nope, we actually need extra games. And so if everybody plays a non-conference game to give them 11 games, that's 15 extra games that we can air on ACC Network. And so that was the point of it. And so what did UNC do? They scheduled this game against Western on Friday, December 11th, which at the time was going to be the final game of the year. So it made no sense from UNC's perspective. This is an exhibition. And then, of course, everything happened with Miami's COVID situation, and so it got flipped. So now you actually have some benefit. But Mac Brown lamented the loss of that Charlotte game for quite a while, because that was important to be able to build depth and to use it as a glorified scrimmage, to get a lot of young guys playing time, especially on the offensive side of the ball. So that's how they're going to use this. And Matt kind of jabbed at Ross Martin earlier this week, because Ross got on him about his coach speak. But it's the truth. I mean, North Carolina is going to win this one handily. And so it's really about getting those young guys a lot of opportunities. And maybe that will pay dividends for that game in Miami on December 12th.
It's got to be the game you're most excited about, Tommy.
Hey, I'm going to be there. The family's going to be there. They actually sold tickets to this one. And like you mentioned,
backup quarterback, right?
Absolutely.
You're going to see a lot of Jacoby Criswell.
Look, let me show you
You're
something.
going to see a lot of Jace Reuter.
You see that 6 up there? Might have to break it out. Might have to wear it to Chapel Hill. No, it's a game to if it were the end of the year, like you said, Greg, I think it would be just terrible. It'd been like Dinar Cersei and those guys, or excuse me, Cersei and Sean Drone mentioned how they'd had Friday night lights back in the day. And I don't know if that was my audio or y'all's, but it would be similar type situation to that. Jason, you mentioned on the betting lines and stuff, Carolina can still accomplish what they want to do in this one. So what exactly do they want to accomplish? And I'll ask you this first. How important is it that it's before Miami to get this game out of the way for Miami and prepare for Miami at the same time?
I think it's really helpful for a lot of reasons. One is they just got their butts kicked up front on both sides of the ball in this last game. And this is an opportunity to, and more on the offensive side, actually, in this last game than the defensive side, even though the defense got beat pretty good in the second half on the front. But this is an opportunity to continue to polish stuff up at game speed with the limited reps that you actually can get in games, with the higher pressure of actually performing with the lights on, to get some things polished up, to say, no, we're going to do it right. We're going to do it the right way. And that's really what Mac Brown and the coaching staff are going to be preaching coming into a game like this, because they know, I mean, coach speak and all. Yeah, and, Mac can try to, pull the Lou Holtz that they're going to, that this Western Carolina team might be, they might not be the same level, but they could beat anybody on any given day now. He could try to take that stance, but coaches know that players know that, like, look, this team's probably not going to beat us, but what can we get out of this? Can we play to standard? And that's the thing. Can we play to the standard that we set in this program? Can we do it right, so that when we go back and we look at this tape, when we evaluate, are we going to see you doing it right, or are you going to be running? Or is there going to be a younger guy coming for your job because he actually did it right in this game? And that second part is a really big part in this game, because your hope is that you can get those older guys enough reps early on to polish some stuff up, make sure that they're holding standard. And then you give basically your young guys that you're trying to bring along on the offensive side, you try to give them a couple quarters. On the defensive side, you're working them in drive 1, drive 2. Some of those guys that maybe Mac doesn't totally trust on the defensive line or at outside linebacker. I mean, some of these guys that like Evans who flashed, but then they'll make a mistake here or there. Those guys are going to get an opportunity to play enough to where they'll be able to play through some mistakes and then get coached up a little bit and then do it right enough times in the game to start reinforcing good habits. And then you can feel a little bit more trust in playing them against Miami, which then makes you better because those guys are physically a little ahead of some of the older guys. So I think there's a lot of positives here. It also means that you don't have to necessarily play Sam Howell, 3+ quarters. You hopefully can get him maybe 2 quarters and a couple snaps and then get him out of there. Maybe, if you want to give him that much, you want to keep him polished, keep him in rhythm, but it gives you a chance not to get a bunch of guys hurt as well. I mean, I'd put bubble wrap on my running backs, for example, Javonte and Michael Carter. I'm giving those guys, like 5 carries apiece, and then see you guys, we're going to have to start working on your backups here in this game. And we'll have you guys ready. So you're that much fresher at some of those positions going into Miami as well.
Yeah. And Tommy, kind of to highlight what Jason's talking about there. I mean, Mac Brown on Wednesday talked about how he was not happy with how practice has gone this week. And that really is kind of the test. And he's talked earlier this year about how last year, I mean, it was really up and down in terms of how the guys practiced. And he knew, some games they were going to be up and other games they weren't because they didn't practice very well. They've been better this year, as you would expect in year 2. But there have been some weeks where he hasn't been happy with how they performed. And apparently coming off that Notre Dame game, knowing that this is a game they can play their C game and win. I mean, let's be honest about it.
They could probably play their D game, maybe even their F game and win this game.
Right.
Well, it looks
that's not the point. The point is
they need to play their A game.
Play to your standard. Play your A game for 2 quarters. Get out of there. Know that you did a good job, and then let the backups and the young guys get a lot of time.
Yeah, and looking at Western schedule is the most bizarre looking schedule you'll ever see in football. But they lost to Liberty by a bunch, and they lost to Eastern Kentucky by a bunch, and then they don't play again until at Furman on February 20th. I mean, I feel for those kids. They're getting to play college football though, and a lot of us don't. Greg, we mentioned Sam Howell. We've mentioned the running backs. How long do they play? I mean, ideally, how long does Sam Howell play in this game?
Well, Mac Brown traditionally, has always said that he wants to play his starters through the third quarter, just to eliminate any chance of a comeback. This is a different situation, not just because Western Carolina's only played 2 games and because UNC is favored by 50, but because this is a team that needs to build depth. I mean, if you're really wanting to take the next step in 2021 and be playing for a spot this time of year into the ACC championship game, you're going to have more people contribute, especially on offense. And so I think because of that, once North Carolina is able to get a significant lead, there's no reason they shouldn't score on every possession. I mean, there may be one where something happens and they drop a pass or somebody falls down, and you're not going to do that. But you would think by halftime, I mean, this is going to be 42-0. And at that point, you would assume they'd be comfortable and moving to the next line. But yeah, I mean, I would assume at least through the first half. I'd be surprised if Sam Howell takes the field in the third quarter. But as I said, Mac Brown's kind of always held to the notion of keep your starters in at least until you get closer to the fourth quarter.
I wouldn't be surprised if Howell got the first series of the third quarter. And I would be surprised if he went past the first series of the third quarter. And the reason for that is a lot of coaches hold to this idea that they want to make sure that their guys stay in the rhythm of being able to go into halftime and then come out of halftime sharp, and just make sure that they're able to stay in the game that way, and that's an important thing. So even if you're up 63-0, you come out with your starting quarterback and a few of those guys for the first series of the third quarter. And even if they only take 3 or 4 snaps in the third quarter, and then you make a change mid-drive to your backups. You put your backup quarterback in there. You've at least had your guy go through a normal halftime warm-up, get back into the flow, get back into the kind of rhythm that he has to be to take snaps and be focused on that and then move forward. So I wouldn't be surprised with that. I wouldn't be terribly surprised if he just, came out without pads on at the half or after half. But I think the thing that I most expect is probably for him to take a few snaps in the third quarter and then get the hook after that first drive. If he's in there beyond the first drive of the third quarter, then something in my view, went seriously wrong. Or there's going to be a lot of room to criticize the staff for not playing the young guys enough.
And one of the reasons that Howe and the entire offensive line played into the fourth quarter against Duke, even though that game was in hand, is because Max said that their last drive of the third quarter was not a good drive. And they didn't want to end on that note. They wanted to end on a positive drive. So that kind of speaks to the mindset of finishing strong and playing to the level that's set and not kind of coasting.
Yeah, you haven't earned your way off the field, essentially.
Right. Yeah. So last question before the break, Greg. Does my guy Chriswell get to throw any passes tomorrow, Saturday, whenever it is? We're recording this on Thursday afternoon.
Yes. If he's going to throw a pass in 2020, it's going to be in this game.
Interesting. It needs to happen. I think the message boards might light up as bad as the basketball, as bad as they were on the basketball games the last 3 days if Chriswell doesn't get some attempts. Let me talk about Johnny T-Shirt and JohnnyT-Shirt.com. Of course, great sponsors. Jason loves them. We need to get Jason some Johnny T-Shirt sweatshirts, though. He needs to sport those to go along with his other sponsorships. Johnny T-Shirt is, of course, our great sponsor and great friend of Inside Carolina, and they've got great deals. I saw an email today talking about all the Jordan brand stuff was on sale. So you need to go there and you need to go online. If you're in town Saturday for the Western game, stop by and visit them and get all that great gear. Get all you need, especially for everybody in the family and friends. Christmas time is here. Take us another short break. Pay the national bills. Be right back with the Game Plan Podcast. Greg Barnes, Jason Staples. I'm Tommy Ashley. All right, boys, we're back. It's the Game Plan. It's Inside Carolina. It's Johnny T-Shirt, and it's Western Carolina coming to town. I said earlier we probably wouldn't talk about Western enough, but Jason, I'll come to you for just a brief moment to talk about the game plan against Western. Is it let it fly or is it run Carter and Williams? This is important stuff because they're close to 1,000, and most Carolina fans want to see them both get 1,000. I think Michael Carter's 150 away, and Javonte is maybe a little bit over 100 away. What's Mac do, Jason?
So I think they're going to run their offense. So
that's not that you need to expound on that.
Yeah, I mean, what that means is that they're not going to come into this and say, "Okay, we're just going to hand the ball off." We're going to do this no matter what. They're going to run their base offense. It's going to be straight base plays in this game. So you're going to see inside zone. You're going to see power and counter. You're going to see some outside zone and some varieties of those things along with all the RPO tags on them. And whether they hand it off or not is going to be contingent on what Western shows in the box. So if they have 6 blockers and Western has 6 guys in the box, they're running the ball. If Western puts 7, 8 guys in the box, they're going to pitch the ball out on the outside, and that's that. We're going to see some, and then we'll see some play action and go over the top. You'll probably see a couple of those early in the game, particularly to just maintain some rhythm. So this is a good game. If you do, I don't know if there's college fantasy this year or whatever, but I'm sure that there's something out there. If there's some way of getting De'Ami Brown on your team for this week, you're probably guaranteed a touchdown, maybe 2, because they'll pitch one over the top and he'll run right by somebody, and they'll do that. But my anticipation is that you're going to see Carter and Williams each get probably 6, 7, 8 carries apiece, and then take a seat. I don't think you're going to see those guys go over, say, 20, 21 touches as a pair in this game because it's just not worth it. The coaches know that the position that's going to be most easy, you're going to have the most easily injured position, the guy that's taken the most abuse, the most contact, is going to be that guy. It's going to be the running back, which is one of the reasons why having a two-headed running back like Williams and Carter is so helpful, not only to maintaining a fresh back who's better able to handle what the defense is doing, but also because those guys are going to get hurt less because they're popping in and out every few plays. And so they're fresher. And that means that their body handles the load better. You continue that into this game where I think they'll probably play through the first half, but I'd be surprised if we saw more than, say, 21 touches combined from those two guys. That's about the sweet spot, I think, in the first half, where you see those guys touch it there. And the thing is, as we can kind of expect, we're probably going to see a few big runs from them. So, they might only have 6-7 carries, but if they're averaging 10, 12 yards a carry against a defense that's just really overmatched, then you're going to see, maybe 60, 70 yards apiece on 6-7 carries. And, that's plenty for this game, but I don't think they're going to be featured. The last thing these coaches are going to do is try to chase 1,000 yards in a game like this. They want to make sure that their team is executing to the standard, and that when they call something, that the guys are going to do what they're supposed to do, whether that's Miami or whether that's Western. And so if you're supposed to hand it off, hand it off. If you're supposed to pull it and throw the glance or throw the bubble or throw the, smoke screen or whatever, then you do that. That's just what they're going to do.
Yeah, that's true. Do what you do, not what the other team does. Go ahead, Greg.
Classic Roy Williams, right? But I think the other component to this is we know that Michael Carter's gone. I'm assuming that Javonte Williams is going to capitalize on his great year and enter the NFL draft, and I would assume so. So what you have left is a stable of running backs that have combined for 21 carries this year, and that's your future. Unless you're counting on one of the freshmen coming in next year to be a stud. So they need work. They need a lot of work, and so the idea would be to let Carter and Javonte get into the flow and do all the things that Jason said. But really, even if you have Howell in there, really put those guys in and let them work with the ones and get some experience, because they're going to need it next year. That's one of the things that Mack and Bateman have talked on, is that Bateman's had to really rely on some of the younger guys just because the talent was in the younger classes. And so while he didn't do it enough early in the year and didn't do it enough last year, we saw a lot of young guys play defensively against Notre Dame. We saw them play early. And that's good for those guys. Those are building block opportunities. We haven't really seen that offensively. You've seen 6 offensive linemen primarily. Backup quarterback, as we talked about a minute ago, Tommy. No other quarterback's taking a pass. And then you haven't had to rely on a backup running back because you're probably the best two-headed monster in college football in Carter and Williams. And so this is really a game for the offense to build some depth, because this has been lacking. And it's not a big deal in the offensive line because everybody's coming back. But really, really at wide receiver and especially at running back, this is a game where those guys need to get a lot of touches. And you can use a lot of these guys the last 3 quarters of the game, at least kind of get their feet wet.
Yeah, you sort of hinted on there, Carter's last game, and all the information came out, who's leaving, who's coming back, who's graduating early and getting out of there. Greg, it is senior day, and I saw Michael Carter's media thing, and he's very thankful and all that, but it's a little disappointing that place won't be full or somewhat full against a team like Western for these guys to go out on the field. But I have a feeling Mac has something planned for them. But just speak to the number of talented guys this team does lose, especially on that offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, the thing that really sucks for these guys is, their family members are not even going to be allowed on the field, and that's an NCAA rule. So family's going to be in the stands, of course, but they're doing a video presentation for each of the guys. So that'll be nice, but it's just another part of 2020 that really kind of stinks. we knew that Michael Carter was going to be gone. That really is not a surprise. Daz Newsome is a name that I thought maybe he would come back. I don't know what his draft stock looks like, but he apparently thinks he's ready to move on. We knew Chaz was going to leave, and then I think some of the names that were interesting to me, we knew Tamon Fox was going to leave. Is Garrett Walston? I thought there was a possibility that he would come back, and then Jace Ruger. And Jace is a very interesting story, right? Because here's a kid that's been injured twice, season-ending injuries. So he was already set up to have a potential 6-year career. Well, then you add 2020 into the mix, where this year doesn't count eligibility-wise. And so he's going to be a fourth-year guy on somebody's team next year, potentially with 4 years to play.
I saw his dad post that. I'm like, that's Brigham Young right there. He needs to go out there and play.
Chris Winkie,
lots of people go to school for 7 years. Go to college for 7 years.
That's right. I know several people that did. My brother did.
He might be the first. Has 5 to play 4, plays 7.
Right. But the fact that he's able to get his degree, is impressive. And so he's really set himself up. And he's been Jace has been a true champion too of the locker room mindset. A great team player, a very sharp kid, very strong in his faith. And so I think he set himself up well for a very solid future as well as a very solid football career, and that he's got a lot of good days ahead of him. So, I mean, that speaks to kind of what North Carolina's going to have to deal with. That's why it's important for Jacoby to get some good reps in this game on Saturday, because he's going to be your primary guy next year as a backup, even with May coming in. And then, of course, Bo Corrales and Tyrone Hopper, I think we should mention them. Yep. They actually decided to come back. Corrales has battled some injuries, so it makes sense that he wants to come back, and he could be a key figure for UNC if Diami decides to join Daz Newsome in leaving. We don't know that quite yet. And then Tyrone Hopper gives them an extra body at outside linebacker and provides some experience, some veteran leadership on the defensive line, which clearly is much needed.
Jason, your thoughts on a guy, Javante's got to go. I mean, if he comes back, he must love it. And, yeah, I can't imagine it. But a guy like Diamond Brown, you've watched enough wide receivers. He's a junior. He's draft eligible.
Ooh, that's a close one.
Yeah, and that's my thing, watching him. And this is not a knock on him because he's a fantastic college player. But, those type guys are a dime a dozen in the pros. What does he need to show to be able to go this year that he hasn't already shown over the past 2 or 3 years?
Well, I mean, I think the biggest thing that he needs to demonstrate is consistency, particularly on the shorter stuff. He needs to show that he's a complete receiver, not just a deep guy. And, being a deep guy, it's one of those things like you only got one trick, but that's a pretty good trick, right? So, if you can run by people, you can make a living running by people. The problem is that it's a lot harder to run by people in the NFL. And so he needs to be more consistent to project really where he most likely will at the NFL level, because at the NFL level, he's probably a number 2 guy. He's not a feature receiver. He's not a number 1 receiver, I don't think. Now, he has enough physical tools that, he might make me eat those words in the sense of, develop a little more consistency, demonstrate that he can do this at the highest, against the highest level of competition. And, for the right team in the right context, maybe he could be. But I think really he's probably going to be a number 2 guy at the NFL level, which means that you're expecting him to be a guy that can do a lot of the dirty work in addition to being able to stretch the field. And he's, over the last couple of years, he's dropped too many balls that should be routine catches for a top level NFL guy who's going to have a long career there. And like you said, the problem is that guys his size they grow on trees for the NFL draft. So you have to be special. And, he's got good size. He's not small. He's about 6'2". But there are a lot of now these days, it's amazing for me to think about it because I'd be a small receiver in today's game. But But there are a lot of guys now that are, 6'2", 6'3" receivers that are coming into the NFL draft, and he has to show that he is more consistent, that he's better than those other guys. I think he's already shown that he's a quality route runner, that he has a knack for playing the position. He's a natural receiver in terms of playing the position that does already elevate him over a lot of the other guys his size. And of course, he runs really well and he's smooth. So he's got a lot that he brings to the table, but he's not a guy that you look at and you're like, that's a surefire first rounder. He's probably a second, third rounder at this stage. If he goes, I'd probably peg him in the third round. I need to break him down a little bit more from this year and look at who else is going to be in the draft. But, that puts him kind of on the margin of whether it's a good idea to stay or go. I do think that there's enough that he can improve on. Physically, he needs to get stronger. And then just in terms of consistency in being able to demonstrate that he can create separation underneath and that he can make the tough catches underneath and make the easy catches underneath, that's going to be the next step for him. And if he can show that, he'll elevate his stock. And that might mean that it would be a good idea for him to come back. For him to go, I mean, I don't think you could complain about it, because those are all things that he can potentially improve, in his first year or two at the next level. And if he wants to go get paid, he can go get paid. So he's one of those guys that you really want to see. You want to feel out some of the top level NFL scouting minds on this. Reach out to them, see where you might project. Look at who else is going to come out, and sort of assess where you might stand there. But he's an interesting one. Now, Daz Newsome, I would advise to come back, but that's another question.
It's interesting comments, Greg. To that angle, speaking to the NFL, what have you gathered that Mack Brown and his staffs, I guess Mack Brown solely, or majority of the decision-making and the contact, how does he handle this situation? We know how Dean Smith and Roy Williams do it, and we know that Dean and Roy have no problem telling somebody if they need to go, whether they want to or not. I mean, the famous comments are, you better go talk to my mama if you're telling me I need to leave early, from some high-level players. How does Mack Brown handle this?
Same way. Mack Brown has enough belief in his recruiting ability that you're going to replace good pieces with good pieces. And so getting guys drafted in the NFL helps your recruiting, and that's a good thing for the program. And so he's been very, very open with, hey, if you're ready to go, we're going to help you go, and we're going to do everything we can to help. That's what Moody's in town for, and that's why he's drawing a paycheck, is he's the NFL connection, and he handles pro days, he handles all the interviews. He gets things set up so that these guys know exactly what they need to work on, where they're projected to go, if it's smart for them to go, and helps along the process of figuring out the necessary steps for these kids. And that's an attractive recruiting aspect too, is you say, hey, look, we've got this process in place when you get here that we're going to let you know every single year, hey, even though you're not eligible to go into the draft, this is kind of where you stand. This is what you need to work on to get to that point, and this is how we can help you. So that by the time you're ready to go, none of this is a surprise. We've talked about this. It's been handled in the off season. So very much the same approach. And I think that speaks to Mack's, it speaks to his Hall of Fame tenure, right? But it also speaks to he understands what it takes. He's had a lot of guys get drafted, and people that are insecure and are clinging for the opportunity to win games. Those are the coaches that kind of want to hold players back. And they will say, yeah, you know what? Well, we could use you for another year, and you could use another year. Mack's like, you know what? We're going to win next year, whether we have you or not. So go ahead and jump ship and do everything you can to provide for you and your family. And personally, I think that's the way to do it. I think these kids play a very physical game. They don't get paid for it at the college level. If you can make money, go do it.
Yeah, I always love Dean Smith's comment. Everything in seasons for the team, everything out of seasons for the player.
Yep.
Let's wrap this one up, and we can talk about this. Greg, your article is on Inside Carolina Today on Thursday. I tweeted about it after watching the college football playoff rankings come out. after this season, after the season Carolina's had, the Orange Bowl is actually in play for this team. It's 2020, man. But tell us what has to happen for that to happen, because it would be pretty unbelievable.
Well, I think kind of the main thing is probably need Clemson to beat Notre Dame. Don't need it to be a bloodbath, but I think if Clemson wins by a touchdown or two, both of those teams are going to be in the college football playoff. And the way
Good for the ACC.
Yep.
That's right, absolutely.
Cash.
And the way the protocol works is the Orange Bowl is contractually obligated to, if they don't take the ACC champion because they get to the playoff, they take the next highest ranked team in the CFP rankings. And I don't know about you guys, I was surprised that UNC jumped up in the polls after losing to Notre Dame. I didn't expect them to fall a lot because they played well. But I think that speaks to how much value the committee puts on Notre Dame, how highly they think of that team for North Carolina to lose by 14 points and yet move up in the rankings. But by doing that, you're really talking about Miami, who's at number 10. They haven't played in 3 weeks. In North Carolina at number 17, being your two options for the Orange Bowl if both Notre Dame and Clemson make it to the college football playoff. And I guess Miami plays Duke this weekend. And then who they have? Georgia Tech maybe on the 19th if they don't make it to the ACC title game.
Who knows what happens? Yeah,
Right.
That's the schedule.
Right. So it really sets up, and Miami beats Duke. North Carolina handles Western Carolina as they will. That game in Miami is going to be for possibly for the Orange Bowl, and I think that's a great thing for the program. That's something that Mac Brown can really use this week and next, and be like, hey, we may not get there. Even if we beat Miami, we may not jump them in the rankings. We'll have to wait and see. But you could potentially take care of that yourself. If you blow out Miami, the committee may have no choice. And at that point in time, you're talking about playing in the Orange Bowl on January 2nd, which, given that everybody kind of looked ahead to 2021 as being the special year for this program, to play potentially in the Orange Bowl in 2020 after everything that they've been through, it's crazy.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I don't even know how to – as somebody that's followed Carolina football in my entire life, I don't know how to even fathom an Orange Bowl trip, especially after losing to that damn Florida State team. Jason, national question, and this is something that's been debated all week. First of all, Greg, let me clarify just so our listeners understand. If Carolina beats Miami, but Miami finishes higher ranked in the CFP than Carolina, they go to the Orange Bowl, assuming Notre Dame and Clemson are both in the playoff. It's done by ranking, correct?
It's ranking, not standings. So that was brought up on the board that Miami, if they take care of business in these games other than UNC, they will be higher than UNC in the standings, the ACC standings. But it is the CFP rankings that make that determination for the Orange Bowl. And the other thing, let me mention this, Tommy. We talked about this off air. We got into this habit of really focusing on the tiers for the bowl system. Like, CFP, then you had the Orange Bowl, and if a Big Ten team was in the Orange Bowl, then the ACC got a Citrus Bowl game appearance. And then you had the Russell Athletic Bowl, which is now the Cheez-It Bowl, which is the next one. Then you had Tier 1, which is like 4 or 5 bowl games. And then you had Tier 2. Well, when the ACC announced their 6-year bowl plan last summer, so from 2020, so it starts this year, through 2025, they eliminated all of the tier talk. So it's all about what's best for the community, what's best for these bowls in terms of proximity and matchups, all these kind of things. That's what matters. It's not the tier process anymore. And I think a lot of people have kind of become fixated on that Cheez-It Bowl. And because they have a good opponent in that game, it's still an important bowl for sure. But it's not the hierarchy that it once was. And there's going to be a lot of dialogue of which bowl wants which team. And so we'll have to wait and see. I mean, you've got the Gator Bowl, you've got the bowl in Charlotte, which I guess is the Duke's Mayo Bowl now.
Something like that.
Cheez-It Bowl. So those kind of take precedent because they've always been kind of the big bowl games. But it is not set in stone, once you get past the Orange Bowl. And so that's going to be a little bit different conversation this year.
I wouldn't mind a Gator Bowl versus LSU or somebody like that. But yeah, a good matchup is what I know the fans would like to see. Jason, question. Big debate on thing 11-0 Cincinnati or 5-0 Ohio State. Who goes to the playoffs? Not who goes, who should. Yeah, that could be two separate answers.
Ooh.
And I say this hating Ohio State. I'll freely
That's a
admit it.
hard one. As far as who deserves to go 11-0 Cincy versus 5-0 Ohio State, I would say Cincy deserves to go.
I agree.
Who do they take?
They'd take Ohio State.
That would be an absolute epic meltdown across the country, would it not be, Greg?
No.
Man,
Ohio State has more alums, and even in the state of Ohio, people would be happy about that.
It's the Power 5 team.
What do y'all think about Brigham Young coming to Coastal Carolina this weekend?
I like it. They're not scared.
They're not scared. When they come Chapel Hill and play instead of Western. Anyway, I cut you off.
They couldn't because of the rules from the ACC.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, I think they'd take Ohio State just because they say the eye test and that we believe that's one of the 4 best teams in the country, which they probably are. But and again, you wouldn't see an outcry. You'd see an outcry among a few national sports writers and so on. But the fact is, I've lived in Ohio. The only people in Ohio that would be upset to see Ohio State with 5 wins go to the playoff over Cincinnati with 11 wins are Michigan fans.
And the Cincinnati parents.
Yeah, and the Cincinnati parents, because even the Cincinnati fans are usually Ohio State fans. So that's and the playoff committee knows this, and they know on which side their bread is buttered. So that's what I would expect.
And it may be a good thing for Cincinnati because Central Florida has already set the precedent, right? Go undefeated, you declare a national championship. Since he doesn't go to the playoff, they win their bowl game against some hack team.
You can't just declare a national championship. You can't just declare bankruptcy.
You can just declare you win. I mean, I won. Period. I don't care what you say.
I didn't lose. I didn't lose.
Prove I lost.
I did it. I declared it.
This is hilarious. It's been fun doing these. We got a big one next week, but this one not so much. Carolina and Western at noon in Kenan Stadium. It's been the Game Plan Podcast. Jason Staples, Greg Barnes. I'm your host, Tommy Ashley. Rate us, review us, subscribe, and support Johnny T-Shirt. Thanks, guys.